Today we're going to be talking about active duty passive income, which is one of the other military investing communities, and we're going to talk about a few things they have right and a few things that I don't like in the way that they operate. And I'm going to try to keep this as unbiased as possible, given that, admittedly, we're both in the same kind of environment, so I guess that makes us competitors, but it is what it is. I would like to throw out there that I know all of the guys in this group. There's never really been any necessary beef between our communities, but there have been a few incidents where people in their community were soliciting in my community, which I didn't like, so I blocked them, and we had some words, but all good. There is one interaction though, and I will just be honest about this right at the beginning. There's a gentleman in the group named Eric who I've been told by multiple people used to handle calls, and he'd hear someone was in my group, and instead of talking to them about his group, he would basically just tear me down on the call. And I called him to discuss this like a man, and he sent me a text, driving, what's up? I said, hey, call me when you have a chance. He never did. I tried again, yada yada. We never had the conversation. So, Eric, if you want to have that conversation, I'm still around. But that was years ago, actually, so it is what it is. I just want to make sure that all that's out there, so when everyone's like, oh, you're not perfectly unbiased, it is what it is. We're naturally in the same vein, and I love those dudes for the most part, right? Like Adam LeBar, a fucking stud, right? So it is what it is, and they mean well. Now, the first thing we're going to dig into that I think they get really well, or that I think they do really well, is they have a VA loan masterclass. Now, I've not personally been through their specific masterclass in entirety, but from what I understand and from what I've seen, it's put together very well, and it articulates all of the stuff that you need to know to utilize your VA loan. Now, at one point in their original book, they had talked about how you could refinance your VA loan into a conventional loan and then reinstate entitlement, and you could continue to do that. It is really, you can only do that one time. It's a one-time restoration of entitlement, and I believe, from my understanding, that they are now, have corrected that, and, it is what it is. So that was one misnomer and a whole bunch of really good information, and let's be real, most people are way less informed about the VA loan than they are, and so I would say that's a good. Number two is I think they do a really good job of incentivizing engagement within their community and celebrating wins using challenge coins and other military-focused, reward programs. So they do some cool things as far as you can earn a challenge coin for, let's say, finishing your onboarding with their community, or various different things within their programs. And I think that's really cool. In fact, they've actually been looking for ways to implement something similar within the War Room Mastermind. So I think that's a great idea, and I love that they stuck with challenge coins and other military-related feedback loops. And the third thing is their branding and messaging is on point. I just did a full rebrand, and I still don't know if mine competes with theirs. Their branding has been really solid for years. The coloring, the way they do their logos, and everything is just solid, and they've got really good messaging behind it. Part of that, I'm sure, is because one of the founders, Mark Yan, is actually a public affairs officer, or at least was in the Marine Corps, so they know a thing or two about getting out in the public. So there you go. There's some stuff that they do right. There's a ton of other things they do well. I'm just trying to balance this out and make it a little bit of one, a little bit of the other, right? So the few things that I would just like to point out as, I don't say negatives, but where I disagree with how they run business, is the first one being the whole life infinite banking concept. Now, if you've watched any of my stuff, you know how I feel about infinite banking in general. Not a fan. Go watch my video or podcast with Will Duffy or Brandon Jenkins. They both do a really good job deep diving this. And let's be real, the infinite banking concept, by and large, is a sham. And I don't want to say it's a sham as in the program doesn't work, but it shouldn't be sold to 95% of the people it's sold to. It makes sense if you can overfund it with six figures, and you're going to be using it more as a cash preservation strategy because you've already accumulated wealth, than it does as a investment strategy, right? An index fund, long term, will outpace it any day. Most real estate investments, most other stuff, there are some pros to it, like it can't go away in a divorce, and it's going to, it won't lose in a recession, but that doesn't outweigh the loss compared to the return that an index fund brings in. So the other problem with this is insurance is a very poorly regulated industry, and there's just a lot of people who don't know what they're doing, or, it's incentivized. The people selling it sell it with all these perks, but they're incentivized to give you a policy that's written differently, right? So let's say they talk to you about this huge cash value, but they get incentivized on the life or the death benefit, which is the opposite. So there's some things in there, and I don't necessarily hate the infinite banking concept or whole life as in general. What I hate is the idea that throwing away your thrift savings plan to buy into one of those is a terrible idea, awful advice, and there's scare tactics used and fear mongering and all this stuff, and there's a lot of groups that have bought into that, and from what I understand, I've not been through the sales pitch, from what I understand, that is pushed more than I think it should be within the community. So just know that my stance on this is, if you've already made it, you're trying to preserve capital, and you can overfund with a check for 6 figures, go for it. Otherwise, stay away from life insurance. It's not what you need right now. Buy term, invest the rest. The second thing that I don't think they have right is that they have a referral program where they introduce you to an agent and or lender within their community. So let's say I'm Dave and I want to go buy a home with a VA loan. They'd be like, wow, Dave, that's awesome. You're moving to Springfield, Missouri. We know an agent there. We'll hook you up with them. And if I buy a house with that person, they get 25% of the commission. And then they also have lenders that they can recommend. Theirs are in-house. And I'll just put it this way. I do the exact same thing, right? So that's not what I have an issue with. I don't have an issue with the program itself. I think it's the biggest win-win-win ever. Because if I'm looking to buy a house, and I do, as the buyer, you don't pay the commission. The sellers do. And the commission comes out of a listing agent who wouldn't have met that buyer in the first place. And so it's just a win-win-win, right? The buyer's agent wouldn't have met that client. The seller sells a house to somebody that might not have bought it. And it doesn't cost anybody any money out of the norm. And then 25% of the commission from the seller goes to the buyer's agent, and you don't pay it. So it's a huge win for everyone. And the lending side is also great. Now, I will say, with their old lenders, when they were partnered with, I'm not going to name names, but they were partnered with someone else prior to when they had their own mortgage company, just not great, right? We'll leave it at that. I know some inside things because okay, let's just leave it at, I know a bit more than I probably should and that I can articulate. There were some things that went down that weren't great. That being said, my understanding is they've pivoted away from that lender, and for all I know, they're phenomenal now. I haven't worked with them since. Okay, so back to the referral program and the issue I have with it, right? The way that I do this personally within my community, the Military Millionaire community, is if you request an introduction to an agent or lender, I find somebody, vet them, and make that intro. At this point, I've got agents and lenders pretty much everywhere, and I'm pretty confident in their abilities. But let's say I've got this really awesome agent, and then over time they get comfortable and they're not so awesome. What I do is, somebody else in that market wants a chance, I give them a lead, and I let them kind of go against each other, like this guy gets a lead, that guy gets a lead, and I keep track of who's got the best closing percentages, right? So I know when I make that introduction for somebody that they are getting the best agent that I know of in that area, and if somebody's better, I'll give that agent a chance to compete and earn the business. And so I'm always trying to match the absolute best agent in that market to the client, because I take 25% as a commission, and I'm only incentivized if everybody wins. I do not make $1 unless you buy a house with that agent, so they've got to be able to help you find exactly what you need, get you through the process. They've got to be solid, or I make nothing, and I'm just sending out introductions. That's great. The active duty passive income side, they still get a commission piece from my understanding, but what they do is they have agents pay to play, right? So if I'm an agent in Springfield, Missouri, I want to be on their team, I apply, they're like, hey, it's going to be $300 a month, or $300 a year, or $3,000 a year, or I don't know, right? I've heard everything from a couple $100 to a couple $1,000. I'm sure it depends on how many agents want to be in that space. Now, my understanding is they will probably accept more than one agent for that area, but essentially they're allowing agents to bid on being the representative who gets fed leads. What does that mean for you? Well, it means if I'm willing to pay $1,000 for leads, and this guy's willing to pay $500 for leads, I'm probably going to get the leads. Does that mean I'm the better agent? No, it means I was willing to pay more. So you're not necessarily getting the best agent in that area, because they're incentivized to pick whoever has a bigger marketing budget or is willing to compete more on the marketing side than they are to go off of closing ratios. Now, there might be some back-end stuff, I don't know, but every agent I know who's tried to work with them has brought this to my attention, that they want to charge to be able to be in their network, which I do not do. I don't take $1 from agents unless they do the job, right? And on the lender side, same thing. I only get paid if they close. I don't know how there's a structure on that end, but it is what it is. Okay, the third thing is they just too many pitches and upsells for me. Now, that's a personal thing, right? Like Grant Cardone, massive amount of pitching, massive amount of sales, massive amount of whatever, does very well, has a great brand, so there is something to be said for that model. It's not me. I don't like it. I don't like how that feels. I don't want to be a part of it. Just not how I'm wired. And so I'm not necessarily saying it's the wrong model. I'm just saying if you join the group, you're going to notice very quickly that everything seems like a pitch or an upsell, even to the point where if you recommend a real estate agent who's not on their list, they will probably remove your comment because it just doesn't feed their bottom line. Whereas in my group, unless you're like an agent or a lender pitching yourself, then I'll block you because nobody needs that self-serving crap in their group. But if you're recommending an agent you've worked with, great. I don't care. And so there's just not as much pitching or bullshit on that side in my group. And that's just my style. And you know what? I'll be real. I'm sure that they make more money than me because of that, because I don't love to pitch and upsell a ton. So in fact, most of my stuff is like, yo, here's this thing. If you want to be in the group, come on in. Otherwise, cool. Stay in the free group. I don't care. As long as you're being helped, like, we're here for you. And we try to keep the free group as free of spam and solicitation as humanly possible to make it valuable and not feel salesy. And number 4 is kind of the like fake it till you make it syndrome. So I'm not saying that that's how they are now, but when they first started, they were selling a multifamily course really before they had a ton of experience in multifamily. And I don't know how much experience they had in like short term when they started selling a short-term rental academy. So there was this kind of vibe of like, we're going to put out the information and then we're going to be, while we're doing this thing, and then eventually like, yeah, I don't know. That's just not me. I don't feel like I've deserved or earned the right to sell something unless I'm gotten pretty good at it or done it quite a few times. Like that, maybe that's an imposter syndrome issue on my end, but that's just a difference in how we run our communities. And it just never necessarily sat well with me to know that there were, early stages of their multifamily or deals where they may or may not have been having a ton of success while they were, coaching people on it online. Now they're doing great now, right? So for all I know, like, who cares? But just not a slope that I like to be on. So I guess the bottom line for that is, like, there's a ton of great information there. There really is. They mean well. There's a lot out there. Their Facebook community is bigger than mine. Overall, my community is way bigger. So there was this little bout online where I said I was the largest military real estate investing community in the world, and someone not in their group actually tried to call me out on being, their Facebook group. And I was like, well, yeah, but that's a Facebook group. I've got Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. And I'm bigger on all those and very close on Facebook. So it is what it is. We're pretty close in size and engagement. Like I said, they probably generate more revenue than I do. And I'm sure they've helped a ton of service members and veterans. And they do an in-person conference. I haven't attended it, but from my understanding, it's decent, right? So, they're great. I've never really been able to shake the feeling that while the information's great, there's a definite care about the bottom line. And so sometimes I think through the pitchy and salesiness, and I've told them this, I think that sometimes it comes across like they might care more about the bottom line, like the money they make, than about the service member. Now, I don't believe that's actually the case, and they have done a lot to change kind of the way they do that messaging over the last little bit. So they've gotten a lot smoother with that, and I know that they've helped a ton of service members and vets. So overall, they're doing great things. We're doing great things. It is what it is. These are some of the differences in the communities and how we operate. And I'm sure if they were to turn around and do the exact same video, they'd have some things I do great and some things that I don't do great, because none of us are perfect. So that being said, that's kind of my thoughts on ADPI. I posted this video because I get asked all the time. So now you guys know. Have a great day.